We're going to have a brief look at the importance of your resolution, your display settings of your laptop when it comes to building and running matrix processes. Now, what I mean by that is whatever resolution you've used while you create the process is the same one that you must use when you run it. Now, if you've got a lovely high resolution laptop that you're using standalone, or you're using it attached to a very high resolution monitor at your desk, you might find that you have a problem when you go out into the world with your process and you're connecting up to other people's monitors or maybe even projectors. Not that we see those often these days, but occasionally you're in a meeting room and that's all you've got access to is a very old projector that cannot do high resolution. So key thing, know what you've built your process in. So on my one, for example, I've made a note here saying it was set up in 1920 by 1200. Now that's a really high resolution, and I could have a problem when I go out to run a workshop because perhaps the equipment that I connect to won't be capable of that. So we need to have that in mind before we start. And the ideal scenario is you also make a copy in a pretty low resolution. So I've got a copy of this that's also set up in 1366 by 768. So what I did was I dropped the resolution on my computer down to that resolution and adjusted the presentation accordingly. Now that way, when I go out to run it, I'll plug into the projector or the screen, have a look, see what the maximum resolution it can run in is, and if it can't run in the resolution that I'd set my process up in, I would just use the lower res copy, or maybe I've got time to adjust it. So in an ideal world, you'd get into that meeting room or ask someone to connect up in that meeting room ahead of the day of your workshop. Check the maximum resolution of the screen that's in the room. That's not always possible, so sometimes you are going to have to just figure it out on the day. So we're going to have a look first at templates and how you can load in a new template if you find that you have to run in a lower resolution. But we're also going to look at what happens if you haven't got a template. So if you haven't got anything there to get you out of trouble, you've only built it in this higher resolution, you don't have any other versions, how are you going to fix that? So I'll cover a thing at a time. I'll pause after each one, so anybody that's seen everything they need to see can exit the video, and then we'll continue with the next part on this topic. So let's have a look first at how you check and change your display resolution. So on the desktop of your computer, if you right click and choose display settings, you can have a look and see what you're set to. So this drop down here is where we change our resolution. On mine, the default is 1920 by 1200. So unless you go in and manually change it, that's what it's going to be set to. So that's likely going to be what you've built your process in, is whatever your recommended maximum display res is. Now, if you want to force it to be a lower one, you just choose the lower one. So what you can do is, while you're making your presentation, just drop yourself down to something low like this, and you're unlikely to have any problems when you go out using this live. I'm actually going to leave mine on 1366 because I just want to give you a quick glimpse of what it looks like when it's wrong. So what will have happened is I've set everything up, I've tested it at my desk, everything looks great. I get into the meeting room, I plug into the external display, and my screen kind of moves, bounces around a bit, but I don't take any notice. What's happened when it does that quick flash of activity is it is dropping your resolution down to max to match up with that external display. So you might not be aware that it's happened. Now, you should check every time as soon as you've plugged in. So before we even open PowerPoint, we're plugging into that external display and we are checking our resolution to know whether we're going to have a problem. If you've not done that though, the first time that you might see the problem is in the first step of your testing. So I'm going to show you something quickly first where it looks even worse. So this is currently not maximized. I've got that minimized. If you open Matrix from a position like this, it will let you do it. So if we go down to slide editor, and it will load up Matrix, but what it's going to do is load in that size window, and you can straight away see that I've got problems. I can't see the scores and things, they're cut off. My assessments button is hiding under here. This window is just simply not big enough for us to work within Matrix. If I go to an assessment, it's going to look even worse. So this is an example of it trying to work on a different size canvas, basically. So I've made it really, really bad by going with not only a low resolution, but a minimized window. And you can see that that is not going to work. When we run our votes, that is how the assessment's going to look. So when you look at it in this edit mode, that really is how it's going to be when it runs live. So before you start your workshop, before anybody else arrives, always go and have a look at your assessments and see how they look, and make sure you haven't got this sort of problem. So let's assume you haven't made that much of a mistake. We're just going to maximize this, and we're going to do the same again. So we're going to go into the menu, a slide editor, let's load up Matrix, and at least we can see what's going on. Our first test would be our first assessment. So hit assessments, go to likelihood. How does it look? Not great. So they can just about read it. We could run the workshop with it looking like this and get through it, but it's really not very slick, is it? So we've definitely got an issue. Had we not already checked our display settings, this would be a great cue to go back and check whether we can increase the size of that canvas to make this look a bit better. If not, we can go through and individually fix things, because you could move the graphs down, you can move this down, you can perhaps change your font size. So we can, if we right click on here and we bring our font down to being a 24, all of a sudden we're okay. But that wasn't a terribly fast way of doing this. If you've got templates saved, and I do highly recommend that you save templates after you set up each process. So you save a template for each assessment. You also save the whole matrix as a template, and then you can get yourself out of trouble even quicker. So that one I've kind of manually played with, but let's just escape out and we'll go to the second assessment. We'll see how much quicker that could have been if we had any templates saved. So I've got a template that I created that is called Impact 1366. So I know that that's the resolution that I want. So I would always label these up in a way that's going to make sense to you. You can say no to the text labels and then it will keep whatever's in here already. If I'd said yes, I'd actually saved that exact one. So it would have been fine if I'd said yes, but I tend to say no because I'm only trying to change the layout, not the wording. And of course, you can still do little tweaks. So that's why templates are important. How do you save a template is an obvious next question. That is up here. So file, template, file, template, save as, and I'm going to call that another impact. And I would always add in my resolution. So that one is all good to go and ready to load in. So this is where your setup before you get into a workshop environment is so important. Okay, so let's just come out of that one and we would now be good to go. So my next step at the start of a workshop, I'd actually run the first vote. So I would deselect all of these and I would run through. So I'd say auto start and then start, and I would run through and physically vote on keypads on all of my assessments and get to a graph. So I'm not going to waste your time at this point looking at that, but that's what I would do in a real workshop environment. So hopefully this has covered everything that you need to know about how to import templates if you've got them, and fix the individual assessments if you haven't. What I want to look at next is how we save and load an entire matrix process. So if you only wanted to know about quick fix for assessments or how to check display, then thank you very much. And for anybody that wants to stay on and learn about templates, let's crack on with that immediately now. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to undo what I've just done, switch everything back on. So I've currently got a lovely clean copy of a process. I'm happy with my assessments. Everything looks how I want it to look. So this is my 1366 by 768 version. So what I would do is give this a sensible name, save the whole thing as a template. So we looked at how we saved each of those assessments. So that was within the assessment, we say file, template, and then we say save as. But what about saving the whole thing so that we can bring the whole thing in anytime that we need it? Come back to the list view. So while you're on the assessments, when you save a template, it is only a template of that assessment. When you are back home like this on your list view, when we save a template, it will be the entire matrix process. So if we go down to File, Process Template, and we can load one that we've used before. So this is again where you've got your get out of jail free card, because if we had a problem, we could have just said load template if we'd already saved one. I actually have this one I've got saved, but let's imagine that we're saving at this point. So save template as, and I'm going to call it risk 1366, and that is now saved. So how do we use that? Let's just come up to here and choose new slide wizard, matrix slide, go, and then I'm going to choose risk 1366. Do I want to import the list item? Yes, I want the list exactly as it was. We can add more if we want to at this point. And then we're just going to hit save and go. We're not going to check everything because we know that this one's set up how we want it. So I'm all good to go. There's my template.